So I'm going to teach you a few different ways of how to start to get how to help your child and yourself to develop an awareness and understanding of the strengths and weaknesses. Okay. The different types of assessments and profiles and questionnaires that you can use. I'm not going to give you an overwhelming number. I'm just going to talk to you about some of the best ones that might fit different parents with children at different developmental ages. Okay. Again, these presentations have been pretty universal in terms of age. So I try to give helpful information that relates to different age groups. So this is a great book. It's a great resource. It's Gretchen Rubin put together this personality profile kind of category, and there it really looks at personalities in 4 different categories. And the one that can become the most problematic is the rebel personality. And so the reason to give this is to really build awareness around not just your tendencies, as an adult, but how you can start creating a dialogue with your child and help them feel more empowered. So if they have a rebel personality, how do I embrace that as a personality and work with it as opposed to against it? Same as a parent, right? How do I parent that rebel personality? How do I parent the obliger? How do I parent the questioner? How do I parent the upholder? And if you're married, that's also really cool, right? How do I co-parent if I'm a questioner and my wife is an upholder, right? How do we negotiate that? So this is a really cool questionnaire, and doesn't take long to do, and you can sit down and have fun with this with your kids. And I would say do it to yourself first. And if you are married, have your spouse do it as well and see where you fit. And then you can do this thinking of your child as well and see where they fit, and then give it to them and see if you're correct. And again, have some fun building awareness around my personality, looking at strengths and tendencies, right? And then if your child is older, I'm going to say high school and above, this is an excellent process of helping your child start to connect with their interests as it relates to taking that leap into a career. And that also includes training in terms of college or college readiness or career readiness type training, whether that's college or otherwise, doesn't matter. But these are just really helpful resources. My next move is they're all heavily government funded resources, and there's just a massive amount of free content on there. So just imagine what you can do with your child to build and cultivate this curiosity, and how that aligns with what I might like to do. I always say to clients I do this with, even students, I said, sometimes the most helpful process, the outcome of this process, is to rule out the 80% of things I'm not interested in doing. And then as a result of that ruling out, I have 20% left to ponder and think about. Cool. And in that 20%, I can make at least 2 or 3 different decisions about what I might think is worth looking into. Great conversation is, what do I think about college? I'm a big fan of putting our children in the driver's seat and letting them determine their path. It builds this sense of agency, this sense of autonomy, this sense of accountability, that I get to choose the path of my life related to who I'm trying to be, who I want to be, my strengths, interests, passions, desires. Doesn't really matter. But you can go through this process of exploring interests and strengths as it relates to college readiness. I had a student once that not on this survey, but we did a college readiness survey, and he did extremely well on all areas of college readiness. There was one area he didn't. And that area that he was really low in was motivation. I mean, it was like 10th percentile. His motivation for college was super low, but everything else was high. And he went to college, and it was a real struggle because the motivation challenge continued. So these types of surveys can just lead to really meaningful dialogue, which, if you're not careful, can lead to fear. But if you keep yourself out of that type of state, it can lead to really meaningful dialogue. And in that dialogue, I can start to help cultivate these interests, these strengths. ADHD can be a real pain in the ass for a lot of people, and they can get really down on themselves for having a medical condition that they have that is never going to go away, right? So one thing that can be extremely validating as soon as you know that there's an ADHD diagnosis in your child, cultivating deliberately and intentionally what are the superpowers, the things you can love about that condition, and how to nurture it, right? And what this means in terms of taking a strength-based relationship, because life's going to continue to exacerbate the symptoms, and remind our kiddos over and over again that they can't focus and they can't pay attention and they can't remember things, and they can't, whatever the can'ts are, add things to it, right? So we have to really step back and say, how do I help see through that disability, and help to cultivate and promote and inspire my child through that strength-based lens. This is a fun process as well, is to really connect with our kids. Hey, it doesn't matter if you have dyslexia. It just matters, what you do with that, right? And how I start to work through those disabilities to become something, right? And not letting the disability become my identity, right? But to see the ability that is within me and how to capitalize on that as a life goal, right? So does anybody here, I don't know if people know who Nick is, but he's if you think your life is when you're
hard, growing up in life, it actually sort of matters to people how you look.
Then you should all meet Nick. He was born with no arms and no legs, and he is one of the most impressive men on the planet, and goes around speaking to schools and companies. He's married. He has children. He's fully employed. I mean, he tried to kill himself when he was 12 years old, or 10 and 12. Tried to commit suicide. He just didn't think his life was worth living.
And so, because I know that I was on the brink of giving up, and I actually attempted suicide at age 10. Now, bro, I had a loving home. This country doesn't have one. There are 300,000 foster kids looking for a home.
What does that mean? I think this point of this slide is, while we're helping our children to nurture and cultivate their innate self, obviously it's not going to be easy. And they're going to have to figure out many of that journey on their own, right? Because even Nick, who came from a loving home, obviously with extreme limitations, found his way through it. And I think this is kind of the side of this is we have to believe, and we have to have faith, and we have to stay focused on what we envision for our children. There's a tremendous amount of power behind that. And then continuing to support our children as they move through the challenges of life. I'm not saying, so I would say, I'm going to get to those slides, but we want to, as we start to help our kids start to focus, find their focus point, right? And we talk incessantly about what we see as the potential in them,